Okay, welcome to this webinar on language-aware assessments organized by CoARA Working Group on Multilingualism and language biases in research assessment. And indeed, notice that this event is recorded. My name is Janne Pölönen. I work at the Federation of Finnish Learned Societies, and I am coordinator of the working group. Next slide, please. And today's webinar in the program, we have first of all a presentation of the CoARA working group by Martin Garnier-Rizet. Then Gian-Maria Greco will present results of the landscape report. I will present the implementation proposal on language-aware assessments, and we will end the webinar with more or less, hopefully 15 minutes for questions and answers. So I will give floor now to Martin, please.
Thank you very much, Janne. So good afternoon or good morning. I don't know where you are. So first, on the next slide, I would like to say a few words about the CoARA initiative in general. Actually, 10 years after DORA, the so-called San Francisco Declaration. Well, launched in January 2022 as part of co-creation exercise, the process of drafting an agreement to reform research assessment has led to a final text in September, signed today by more than 800 organizations from over 50 countries in Europe, but also outside Europe, which is important. The agreement is based on 10 commitments, and it establishes a common direction for research assessment reform, while, and it's essential, the organization's autonomy. It is structured into thematic working groups, such as this one, and relayed by national chapters. So CoARA has provided and continues to provide a space for the members to learn from each other's experience, discuss, develop outputs, to advance the process of research assessment, reform, and also support the implementation of members' commitment. Well, on the next slide, what about multilingualism in this agreement? Well, following the Helsinki initiative on multilingualism, on scholarly communication, which makes 3 recommendations, such as the one that you can read: promote language diversity in research assessment, evaluation, and funding systems. The CoARA agreement mentions the issue of languages in science several times in its commitments, as you can read on the slide. Well, for example, one must consider the diversity of outputs, diverse outputs, irrespective of the language in which they are communicated. So you can see that language appears at different levels within the commitments. So, well, who are we? Who are the partners in our working group? On the next slide, you will discover all the list. I don't know if you, yeah, thank you. So, well, I won't list them all, but what is important is to note the diversity of the institutions represented: universities, learned societies, research performing organizations, research infrastructure, funding bodies, as well as coming from various European countries, of course, but also countries outside Europe, Canada, Argentina, Australia. So you can see that 44 organizations are represented in the group. And you can see the co-chairs and the coordination and actually, I'm sure my colleagues, John Maria, Emmanuel, Monica, Fotis, Emanuele, join me in warmly thanking Janne for his consistent commitment, his kind management of the group, and for all his hard work. I think it was, I had the time to say that. Well, on the next slide, what about the mission? Because so a working group on multilingualism in science, but with what mission? Well, by addressing language diversity and biases in assessment, the working group aims to help and to contribute to institutions to fulfill their duty to strengthen, to promote and defend linguistic equity, diversity, and non-discrimination. Of course, this requires to instill an academic culture that values diversity. Diversity in terms of competencies, outputs in all languages, without exclusion or hierarchy. Well, as you can see on the right part of the slide, these missions are very much in line with three fundamental texts. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, and the European Charter for Researchers, which place all these three, they place language alongside gender, age, social origin, religion, etc., among the criteria that may constitute a risk of discrimination. So, well, in the next one, in the next slide, we just would like to remind the two main objectives the working group want to achieve. So to raise awareness about the importance of considering multilingualism in practice of science, and to provide institutions, but also researchers, funding bodies, with guidelines for, I would say, moving forward and rewarding and incentivizing research conducted and communicated in all languages. Well, as you can see on the right, for that, 4 task forces were created: coordination, of course, landscape analysis, policy advice and implementation, and communication, resulting in the landscape report and implementation proposal, which is today open for consultation until 6th of November. Am I right, Janet? Yeah, I think so. So this landscape report and the implementation proposal will be presented soon by Janne and Jean Maria. Well, finally, maybe in the next slide, well, I just would like to conclude with the large definition of the UNESCO recommendation on open science, which actually emphasizes the importance of multilingual scientific knowledge for the benefit of all, science itself, the scientific community, and the society. So I very much like, and I think that we all very much like this definition that talk about, you know, combining various movements and practices with a common goal. Well, I think that after this short overall presentation of our working group, I will give the floor to John Maria, who will present the landscape report.
Thank you, Martin. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, depending, or good afternoon, depending wherever you are. So first of all, let me say that this work is the work, as Martin said, of Task Force 2, the one that focused on landscape analysis, and it was coordinated by Emmanuel. But Emmanuel Kuzinski could not be here today. He sends his regards. He's the one that drafted this presentation. And so, next slide. Thank you. One of the main outcomes of the Task Force 2 is a landscape report. The goal of the report is to analyze how linguistic diversity is both practiced and supported across the different European research systems. And in order to do so, the task force carried out a literature review and series of surveys, and also some terminological work. I'll get into these late in a few slides. And all this was put together to summarized into a landscape report. Next slide. The next report is organized into 6 chapters plus some bibliometric analysis. And the 6 chapters are, the first one is on glossary. Next slide, yes. So a work that we felt it was necessary to be done, it was carried out at the very beginning, is to create a glossary in order to have a common terminological framework, so that we, and then all the work, internal work of the multilingualism working group, also then the everyone outside that was going to both address these topics, but also read our deliverables, we were, on the same level, at least on terms of definitions of what we meant, so that there were no confusion. And this was a fantastic work done by some of the members of the working group that created this glossary. I will mention the glossary in a bit, but then the glossary will come back into the second part to the third part with Jana. Then the literature review, which was specifically aimed at contextualizing the findings that we did. Especially, we focus on multilingualism, language bias, and the policy implications of this. And then there were 3 surveys. A survey, 4 surveys actually. A survey carried out within the Marie Curie Alumni Association, and then which focus, the association covers mainly early careers and mid-careers researchers. Then there was a survey carried out within the CNR, the Italian Research Center. Next slide, please. This survey then was carried out in Hungarian within the Hungarian Research Network. And finally, a survey that we carried out on the CoARA signatory organizations. And the goal was to gather insights. What are the institutional attitudes and the practices related to multilingualism and language bias? So next slide, I'm going to say a few words for each of the chapters. But before getting into that, an overview of the key findings, some of them. Then the landscape report will be published soon, so then you will be able to read it in details. So the first outcome is not obviously, I mean, it's obviously, is that English is dominant. Doesn't come as a big surprise. But we saw how researchers, despite the dominance of English, still navigate through different languages in their practices, from local outreach, science communication, academic publication, and teaching and education. However, despite these rich world of multilingual practices, the multilingualism still is undervalued, and the multilingual practices are undervalued in assessment. And this creates a disadvantage for non-native or not proficient English speakers, or those researchers that are they have a research that is more locally oriented or oriented on different languages. These surveys helped us see how English is used for publishing grants, but the national languages are crucial for societal impact and obviously for teaching. Then next slide, please. The other part of the findings is that we saw how institutions acknowledge this problem. And what is this problem? Is that there is a minimal support from institutions related to addressing language barriers and receiving translation or multilingual support. Institutions acknowledge this, but a few of them have integrated multilingualism into evaluation or have practices, a system in place to address and provide this type of support. And finally, from the literature review, we saw how there is a kind of epistemic monoculture, where having a dominant language or can lead to an epistemic monoculture, and this is kind of happening a bit. And this then led to a call on for balanced multilingualism, a principle that we articulate in the glossary. And so that we'll come back in a minute. Next slide. So as I said, one of the very first activities that we carried out was a glossary. The glossary at the moment includes, covers 52 terms. It provides very clear definitions. They are relevant to research evaluations. That's the goal. And to whoever is going to talk about multilingualism and language biases within research assessment, and as I said, to whoever is going to read our deliverables. A key term in our glossary is balanced multilingualism, which is defined as the consideration of all the communication purposes in all the different areas of research and all the languages needed to fulfill those purposes in a holistic manner without exclusion or priorities among languages. And thank you very much, Teresa. Next slide, please. So that glossary was important for us to create the kind of common language. And then we carried out a comprehensive literature review focused on multilingualism within research assessment, so there was a very specific. The literature review focused on 5 different areas. The first one is about the benefits of multilingualism, and what we saw from the literature review is some of the benefits are inclusivity, biodiversity, and the societal impact of research, precisely because research can talk to society in the local languages, in the different languages that society speaks. Another section was about English, the English dominance and the biases related to this. And what we saw is the inequalities that derives from this, the risk of epistemic monoculture, which I already mentioned, and the invisibility both of researchers and of research carried out in languages that are not within the dominant sector, dominant language. But also we address the regional and the disciplinary differences, meaning that the literature showed us, the literature review showed us that there are very different practices, a lot of different practices that vary across fields and regions when it comes to language and language assessment, the role of language and multilingualism within our research assessment, there is a 4th section on policy recommendation. What the literature basically propose is to reward the non-English outputs. We need to start rewarding non-English outputs. It's one of the points of discussion that we saw from this analysis of the literature. And at the same time, we need to adapt metrics. They are the one size fits all doesn't work, and we should adapt it also to understand, to take into account local needs. And for instance, there is also quite some centrality of the discussion about narrative CVs. And finally, as one can expect, the other areas that came up from the literature review concerns technology and artificial intelligence, and there is a discussion about machine translation, the role that translation technology could play in inclusion or also in exclusion, depending on the perspective and the use, and how this can also be complement to policies, how technology can be complementary to policy. Next slide. So I am going to go quickly over the 4 surveys and then leave the floor to Janne. The survey from the MCA members, 20%. So this survey was carried out on our members in 2024. And the respondents were 324. We carried out a major survey with 1,200 respondents, but 3 sections, the one on sustainability, the one on open science, the one on multilingualism, were provided only to 1/3 of the respondents each. So in this case, the 324 validated responses, approximately the 27% of the respondents agreed that language barriers disrupted their workflow, and roughly the 33% felt a kind of negative impact on their own well-being. This also, echoes some of the literature out there. And 95% of respondents use English for peer-reviewed publication and 94% for scholarly presentations. However, 49% use some forms of translation. So relied either on professional translation services or on machine translation, automated tools that are out there, or help from colleagues that are more proficient in English. Next slide. The survey on CNR had 910 respondents, so a 13% response rate. the respondents almost all work in multilingual. All the researchers at CNR, they all work in multilingual settings. Now, the specific those specifically working in SSH, social sciences and humanities, well, most of them, they have to balance between Italian and other languages. And these reflect also some forms of local engagement. While in STEM, the English is overwhelmingly dominant, so it's the vast dominant language, specifically for international collaborations and for publications. A very interesting outcome from the survey is about translation, is the one about translation. 36% of the CNR scientists that responded from SSH had their work translated. So they use some forms of translation. Now, next slide. This survey was then translated into Hungarian. And in this case, we had 211 responses, approximately 6% of the entire pool available. Now, the two main outcomes. On the one hand, all UN researchers, all the Hungarian researchers, the researchers that are part of the Hungarian Research Network, use Hungarian and other languages to work. But the English is still the dominant one. 40% publish entirely in English, and almost 30% publish the 90% of what they do in English. So English is very dominant in this case. Finally, we carried out a survey on CoARA members. Next slide. So we had 81 members from 30 countries that replied to our survey, which means the 14.3% of those invited. Still, it's a good number to have a sense of what we were looking for. So nearly 60% of their institutions, so they consider multilingualism. They have some, they have multilingualism in mind to some extent within their research assessment policies. However, only 8 said that they do it to a larger extent, and 13 not really, not so much. At the same time, 61 institutions answered no when it comes to favoring some languages in evaluation, which means that they profess not to limit the outputs by language. This is also very interesting result. The next slide. And finally, there was a bibliometric analysis carried out by André. This was already presented in a previous webinar last year. So I'm just showing this to show how, if we, for instance, as Janne pointed out, for instance, if we focus our analysis on repositories like Web of Science, well, 93% of the publications that are what are covered are in English. So even if we rely just on specific repositories, the results, the analysis may become biased because of how those repositories are structured and work. And next slide. And this concludes my part. I'll leave you to Janne for another deliverable, which is the implementation proposal for language-aware assessment and the toolbox and so
on. Thank you very much, Gian Maria and Martin. So I will now present the implementation proposal for language-aware assessments that is now open for public consultation. And this would hopefully at some point become endorsed by the CoARA steering board and then end up in the CoARA toolbox. And I also shared in the chat some of the links to the implementation proposal document, feedback form, and then news piece about the open consultation and more information about our working group on the CoARA website. So first of all, about the implementation proposal. It is aimed at leadership and management of higher education institutions, as well as research forming and funding organizations to facilitate implementation of CoARA commitments. And the document presents 4 proposals for possible implementation scenarios. And each of these 4 proposals also provides some concrete actions, and for some of those concrete actions also some concrete steps to guide the implementation process. To support the implementation proposal, we also will provide 5 annexes. Glossary already mentioned by Gian-Maria. There is also a checklist of multilingualism policies and initiatives. There will be a toolbox providing practical examples. Of course, the landscape report that Gian-Maria just presented, and then the specific report on the CNR survey from Italy. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the implementation proposals one by one. And the first one is make multilingualism a value in research assessment. Of course, in responsible assessment, we should start with what we value. And here we have 3 possible actions. First, setting up a committee to oversee and consider the implementation of language-aware assessments as outlined in the proposal. The second action would be to incorporate multilingualism into the organization's CoARA action plan. And the third action in this proposal would be to create or update relevant strategies and policies of the organization. And here, as an example, we show the 3 steps related to action 3. So first step is to review international policies. For this, we have actually 1 annex to support this task. Then there is step B, consulting experts, bodies, committees, or societies specializing in this topic. And step C would be then to review and update the strategies and policies of your institution in light of the international and national policies. Next slide, please. The second implementation proposal relates to assessing and improving language diversity, competencies, and practices at the institution. So first action would be to create an overview of the language skills, practices, and needs of different languages in the organization. The second action would be to identify gaps and priorities for improvement. And then action 3 would be to develop capacity, services, and infrastructure to support language skills and multilingualism. As we saw in Gian-Maria's presentation of the landscape report, researchers really need support for surviving in the multilingual environment. And as an example, the steps for action 3 are to first identify strengths and weaknesses related to language skills and competencies and the languages needed in the organization. The second step would be to identify and prioritize areas for improvement and to creating roadmap how to move forward. Yes, thank you, Teresa. So third implementation proposal is to create expectations and criteria for multilingualism. Here again, we have 3 actions, and the first one is to implement criteria that recognize and reward contributions in any language. And again, we have here examples of steps. So first of all, step A is to explicitly state that research contributions are recognized irrespective of language, according to the agreement on reforming research assessment, and that multilingual communication strategies are positively valued. The second step would be to specifically avoid criteria and indicators that use language as a proxy of quality, impact, or internationality of research work. And step C would be to recognize and reward various activities in academic work that really benefit and even require multilingual approach. The other actions in this proposal relate to positively valuing contributions to development of scientific terminology, regardless of the language. And then action 3 is to recognize as merit or establish awards for promoting multilingualism in research process, in collaboration, conferences, events, teaching, community engagement, and so on. And then next slide, please. And finally, we have a fourth implementation proposal to consider, and this is integrating multilingualism into the assessment processes. So the first action in this proposal is to support multilingual communication throughout assessment process. And this is very important for many researchers, so that for instance, project application could be multilingual, not just monolingual in one language only. The second action is about considering language diversity and competencies relevant to assessment context when selecting and instructing the evaluators. And here we have again 2 steps provided in the implementation proposal for this action. So step A is to recruit diverse pool of evaluators that is up to the task of valuing outputs in different languages, and also able to evaluate contributions in relevant languages of the research in question. And step B would be to make evaluators aware of language biases and disadvantages for second language speakers, and explicitly to instruct evaluators to focus on scientific quality rather than the quality of language of communication. And finally, the third action in this implementation proposal is to make multilingualism integral part of quantitative and qualitative information supporting assessment. And of course, we have also specific steps relating to many of the actions, so please read the implementation proposal to see all the steps that we have for different implementation proposals and actions. But yeah, please, Teresa, next slide. I also wanted to briefly show some of the annexes. So first of all, we have Annex 1, the glossary that Gian-Maria already presented. So we have over 50 terms defined, and here is example what it looks like in the annex. So linguistic injustice, a situation that arises when speakers of some languages are disadvantaged relative to others, and then sources where we draw on for this definition. Linguistic prejudice, a bias against groups based on their language or linguistic background, and linguistic privilege, an advantage afforded to speakers of one language in certain settings or for certain purposes, and so on. So this can be a very useful tool for understanding what is at stake in research assessment with regard to multilingualism and language biases. Next slide, please. The second annex is checklist of multilingualism policies and initiatives, and this will support especially the implementation proposal 1. And here we have listed, I didn't even count, maybe a bit over 10 different policies and initiatives, mainly global ones. So agreement on reforming research assessment, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Charter for Fundamental Rights of the European Union, UNESCO recommendation, G20 recommendation, European Charter for Researchers, European Council conclusions on research assessment, Glaxo-Folek Declaration, Helsinki Initiative, Leiden Manifesto, Barcelona Declaration, and European Civil Society Platform for Multilingualism Declaration. And on the next slide, I show an example what kind of information we provide on each of the policies. So first of all, there is a short introduction telling what is this policy about. And then we also give the explicit text context where the passage about language appears. For instance, in case of the European Charter for Researchers, we have the version from 2005, where it is explicitly stated already, employers and or funders of researchers will not discriminate against researchers in any way on the basis of, for instance, language. And we have the same message also in the latest version of the European Charter, updated in 2023. So there you have practically the same proposal. Next slide, please. And I do not show here anything about the toolbox that will appear a bit later. It is in the making at the moment. Also, the landscape report will be published hopefully very soon. And I just mentioned here the fifth annex, exploring multilingualism in research. So the report, a very rich report produced by colleagues at CNR in Italy. So it not only provides the results and very rich interpretation, but also the full questionnaire for conducting an institutional survey on language skills, practices, and attitudes toward multilingualism in an organization. And as Gian Maria already explained, this questionnaire has already been translated into Hungarian, and the survey has been conducted in a different country context. So we hope that in future, the same questionnaire might support similar work in other countries and institutions. So I guess that's all for the implementation proposal. As I mentioned, it is open for consultation until the 6th of November. And now we would very much like to answer. If you may have any questions, please write your questions in the chat, or then just raise your hand to comment or ask any questions. And I hope Martin and Gian Maria also you join the discussion.
May I, in the meantime, just thank everyone from all the members in the working group, because all this work that we presented, and there's all the toolbox and other work that Janne mentioned that we didn't present today, has been carried out by several people. So, for instance, Ginevra Perugginelli for the survey on Siena, just to mention one, because it's like, as showed by Jan on their website. So there is really a thank to, we are grateful to all of them for this work. Giovanna.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this. And you know me as program manager for DORA, but I've removed my background because I want to ask this also as a Brazilian and as a researcher. And so not speaking with my DORA hat now, I wonder, but of course informed by DORA, I wonder how, if you can comment on in the actions and the steps. I don't see anything regarding the why the language by exists, which is associating quality with publishing in English, and how can we counter that part in our research environment. So in Brazil, I'll speak where I was trained. If you, and I'm from the social sciences, so if you're publishing in the American political science paper, it's good. No one needs to know what it is about. No one needs to know. So the intrinsic merit of the article, it's disregarded completely just because the venue of the publication, which of course relates to what DORA and CoARA stands for, to disassociate from the venue of the publication. But I don't see anything here that is talking about that on the, let's say, how can, and I think that's where I should have started. How can we define quality in national lists that are, because we still have national lists, right? For all the disciplines, we have what is a quality journal, and we need them to, because of the predatory journals and the paper mills and everything that we're seeing. So we do need a quality check, and we do need trust markers and everything, and the journalist serves for that. So I wonder if there is I wonder if you can explain to us, you clearly, it seems to me you focused on implementation at research performing organizations more than other parts of the system. And I wonder, what do we need to do for the national systems, for instance, to include more diversity in those lists, that in what counts? So if you, of course, it's a big thing to chew. So this is not to say that this is not good work. It's excellent work. I just wonder, you left other parts of the system, and I was curious to understand what's the discussion around those issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Giovanna. Does Gian Maria or Martin want to answer, or should I go? Yeah, okay. Thank you. This is an excellent question. So in the implementation proposal, we still remain at relatively or do not go very deeply into examples of how to what to do in practice. So we hope to be able to offer more practical, even more practical guidance in the toolbox that we are developing. And of course, the problem is the same as already identified in DORA. So using journal or language as a proxy of quality or impact or internationality of outputs. So there are several possible options to overcome this. First of all, do not use Web of Science, because it only makes visible and recognizable outputs in English, or mainly. Or you can develop much more comprehensive or inclusive global databases like OpenAlex or OpenAir or other information sources. Also, institutional current research information systems, or those that operate at national level, are much more helpful, because there you can include all valued outputs irrespective of the type or language. So this is already making valuable work in any language visible for assessment or monitoring or whatever you want to do. Another option is to use, say, narrative CV, where you can really explain the quality and impact of your contribution entirely irrespective of the language in which it was communicated. So moving away from, especially from exclusive metrics toward more focus on quality, I think that is one possible methodological approach to recognize better different languages. Then we have, of course, in some countries, Finland is one example, Norway is another example, and there are, I know, journalists also in many Latin American countries. So, of course, one possible way to counter the exclusivity of Web of Science and Scopus journalists that really are very exclusive and mainly focused on English language journals that are seemingly international. We can also recognize and validate journals irrespective of the language in which they communicate, as long as they are relevant for the community for which the journalist is prepared for. So there are different solutions that we hope to be able to highlight also in the toolbox. I don't know if I sufficiently answered your question, Giovanna, but that's what I can offer. Kristin, please.
Yes. I was wondering in your mapping exercise if you saw a difference between small and bigger languages. I'm coming from a small country. Norwegian is a small language, and we struggle to develop the academic language. We have quite extensive international recruitment to higher education, which is a challenge to, for instance, bachelor education, where we would like the education to be in Norwegian, but with a big international staff, we sometimes also have to teach in English at the lower academic levels. So the challenge seems to me to be different in smaller and bigger countries. So if you could say something about that. Another thing you talked about was the difference between different academic cultures in the STEM disciplines versus humanities, social sciences. I should think that in the humanities, the national language is more frequently used. In the social sciences, we heard an example that even publishing in the national language can be challenged. Publishing in English will often be given higher value. And in the STEM disciplines, it's you're met with, I don't understand what you're talking about. If you talk about it's important to publish in also the national language in order to reach out to industry and the and your external partners. Now, it would be interesting to hear some comments on those.
If I may quickly comment on the STEM SSH difference, and if maybe Jean-Marie or Martin, you can say about small large language challenge. So we have some research showing indeed that in SSH, of course, publishing in many languages, also the national or official local languages are important because the research often focuses on local topics, history, culture, society. But we also know that there are big differences between countries. And in STEM, for instance, in Poland, much larger share of peer-reviewed output is in Polish than of the SSH output in Finland is in Finnish. So there are surprising differences. And we know that even from Finland, where STEM researchers publish almost all their peer-reviewed output in English, they still use Finnish and Swedish almost exclusively for outreach communication to professional and general audiences. So all fields need to keep their terminology and languages of science alive. So that is a crucial task. But I hope, Jean-Marie, maybe can you comment on the...
Yeah, a comment on still the SSH and STEM. From our from the survey that I know more closely, which is the one from the MCA, we can obviously see the pattern, the kind of the difference. Obviously, the members that use more languages, that don't rely exclusively on English, are members that respondents that come from SSH. But there is a kind of, I would say, more or less equal use of translation services in both. So that means also that not everyone in STEM, those people, they are using English because of the reasons we know, but they feel confident, right? So that's both of them, they need to have support. But the multilingual part in both the scholarly publication, scholarly presentation, and outreach is a bit more for SSH in that case. Martin, I don't know if you want to say something.
Other questions? I don't see any questions on the chat, but...
No, actually, I just wanted to add in there actually when we, so well, I shouldn't say switch because we didn't do that yet, but we plan to switch to Web of Science to OpenAlex. Actually, we use both today, but so now that we use OpenAlex as our major source, I mean, we, of course, I mean, we got a huge number of publication from SHA that we didn't get before, of course, in the Web of Science. So it really make a big difference for the evaluation of the project and the outputs of the project. I was just looking at the figures actually, but I don't get it. But I remember it was really a big difference, of course.
Yes, indeed, there is now an important movement
Yeah.
starting from those exclusive databases toward using or relying more on OpenAlex, for instance, even if there are, of course, data quality issues to handle. But there is a question from Joanna. I'm curious about what's the next for working group and the proposal. So until 6th of November, we hope everyone will comment on the proposal, provide us feedback. We will take that feedback into consideration, still hope to be able to improve our implementation proposal. Then we will submit to the CoARA steering board for review, and we hope that CoARA steering board would then endorse our implementation proposal to be included in the CoARA toolbox. So that is the goal with our implementation proposal. And of course, we are still working on some of the annexes. And as Martin pointed out, we are still looking to produce a position paper, white paper, and maybe also translations of some of our outputs so that we can already provide a bit more wider access to different communities than just providing English language outputs. But I think it is now 4:30. So I think it is time for us to very much thank everyone for participating.
Oh, Janne? Janne,
Yes.
if I may, I just wanted to tell everyone that ANR on many other funding agency will ensure a call within the CoARA RNAT Science in Your Own Language, and you can find the 8 projects which have been retained for funding. And I hope maybe we can, I just put the link in the CoARA website. Yeah. I was actually very glad that we managed to land this call, but as you said, the budget is not what, well, I don't know if we could do it again.
Yes, thank you, Martin. This is fantastic news that we have also resources to develop multilingual, plurilingual practices in journal publishing operations, and also provide broader access to audiences to research published in different languages. So with this, I think we have to end the webinar now and wish everyone the best of evenings.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.